Good morning, everyone. It's a Monday morning, and I'm finally awake. I feel like a radio broadcaster sometimes with the way I start. No, but today, still working on the install process and just kind of cleaning up some things and seeing what I can't do. So I'm going to jump right in. I noticed that some of the data when I brought it in for the install process from my template site, some of the templates I had created before I had updated things, and some of them are better than others, where some have bad data in the actual template site. I'll have to clean that stuff up later on, but that's not one of my priorities right this moment. So basically I'm going to jump right in. I'm working with a data set, and I just want to see if it comes through and see how far we can take it, and then start troubleshooting where it stops off. So remember that I've already changed all the global variables and everything, so I'm running into a few things where there's global variables that weren't updated yet and others that are completed, and in the code there may be some references to some values that don't exist anymore because of that. So I'm updating and fixing those as I go and as I test through things. So the more I find of those, the better it'll work. Remind you that this is all coming from a hosted website that works, so basically as I strip this out and renamed all the variables, there's some things I just have to clean up. So with that said, I'm starting from scratch. I just deleted all the tables and I told it to bring up the site, which automatically added the tables, but as you can see here, there's nothing in them, nothing up my sleeve. And okay, so now we're going to go to the site and we're going to tell it to create it. And let's see how this goes. Let's go to, well, that would help if I showed you the code page since I'm talking about it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create our first community here. It runs through our install process. It's writing the various pieces. It's grabbing them from the template site and then writing them to the local site. And when it finishes doing the community piece, then it's going to do the building piece. So it was a good sports weekend. We had some really good games on this weekend with NFL starting in their first week. So Patriots won. And also Detroit tied it up. I can't believe that. A tie. How do you leave it as a tie? But good game nevertheless. Took it all the way to overtime, and then in overtime tied it up with each one scoring another field goal. So wow. So shout out you sports fans. Okay, and I did turn on all the different things on here so that I will see the different messages for warnings even. I know some of these scripts on the install take a little longer than they expect. That's fine. Those aren't a error. That's just Chrome letting you know, hey, some scripts are taking longer than expected. It's fine since it's the install. And so we're getting the install going, and that gave us our community and our building, and it jumps us over to the avatar set. I don't want to really continue on this part just yet. I'm more interested to see if our community actually loaded the way it should first, and once we get past that step, then we'll start going a little farther to see where it ended up. So first things first, community, we should have one. Yay, that's a good sign. And we have our user ID in there. We have a new one. FOJ is the ID for that. So coming in here, FOJ right there. And we have the action zones were created. So the load zones are prepared and ready to go. Same thing for the building notice. This is our building and the different load zones and stuff for that. So that's a good sign. Connecting grids, let's see how we did there. We have 3, which is correct. We should have 1 for the blank community that loads the default of the community. Then we have a building, and then we have the building in the community. So we have all 3 of those. Notice that there's something else I want to point out. The load zones for the community is 2BD8, and we have 2BD8, which is the extreme zone of our community. That's a good sign. The other piece is these are loading up in Z. The building loads up as the extreme zone for that, Z ZT80. So ZT80, which is ZT80 right there. Okay. And boom, boom. So ZT80, we'll get the extreme zone of that. So those parts all measure out. Community molds. These are loading. The load zone for these are all 2BD8. Okay. Oh yeah, Nadal. Woo, yeah, Nadal fans out there. Hey, he's one of my favorite. Shout out to Rafa Nadal. Okay, and let's see. We have load zone 2BD8, which is the load zone for the community. 2B, yep, so the extreme zone, those should load up with the extreme zone. Next, we have the building. Let's make sure that came in here. And everything looks good. There is a building, KWMC, which KWMC is there. And in the connecting grids, I'm just measuring up and checking all my values. KWMC is here and here, which are the building by itself and the building loading as part of the community. We're good on those. And building molds, do we have some? Yay, we have some. Let's check some. We'll check, you know what, let's order these by the load zone. We're going to order them by the load zone just because I want to double check. We have 6ZR. So action zone 6ZR right there. So those are the custom. That's around some stairs. That's kind of cool. Let's see. We have C3E. C3E is this one, and that is our high load zone. So when we're far away. And then we should have some, let's see, T0W, which is, I know, very cryptic with the names, with the IDs. Normal load zone, so that's when we're near, those load. And let's see, there's a ZT8 we already know is our extreme load zone, so those should load when we're farthest away. Okay, with all those pieces in place, we also have, let's see how many, we have 205. Now mind you that the first 144 of those images were loaded from the, are loaded as part of the, let me think, default stock images. So 144 of those are there. There's about 35 that come in with the community, and then the rest of them came in with the building. We'll sort through that and clean it up because I have a feeling that grabbed more than we needed, but there's some queries I can do. And that's a cleanup on the template website, which is not part of the distribution, so not as worried about that at the moment. We're going to worry more about what's part of the actual distribution for open source. So, okay, so we have all those pieces in place. So let's go ahead and pick our avatar. And I know I keep picking the same one. For testing purposes, what you're going to see me do is you're going to see me do a lot of the same picks so that it doesn't become a variable. Like if I pick a different avatar and all of a sudden there's a problem with that avatar, then we wouldn't, we would end up with a new issue. But right now I keep on picking the exact same one because it helps me limit out problems with the scene, which is what we're working on right now, from problems with the avatar, which later on I'll go through, pick each avatar, and we'll make sure that each one works independently by themselves. But for now, the biggest thing is just making sure that, you know, some of the functionality is working. I want to make sure, hey, I can choose a color of a shirt. We can choose a color of pants. I purposely select two different items because they use different code to do each one of those. So depending if it's the first one, the last one, or how you're doing these, it does switch code as you're going to do different things. So I just want to make sure I pick a couple different things in color. Another thing is the avatar name. I should be able to switch the avatar name, and that looks all good. And finally, when I close the avatar, what happens is it's now going to attempt to load the scene, which I already know from experience in testing this that it doesn't load. But The reason it doesn't load is not clear yet. So what I'm going to do is I tried to load the scene and it didn't load. Since we already checked all of our data and everything appears to have done what it wanted, the next step that I need to do is, I actually think I just got a clue of what it is. Okay, so when I brought in those uploads, why are past upload IDs coming up blank on some things? They should... Past upload ID is blank means that it's part of the stock photos. Okay, so maybe I should write those where they come in and they... Past upload ID is the same as the upload ID. We'll worry about that later. That's 144 of them. But I think all the ones I'm using in this... Oh. Okay, if it's not, it should stay the same. Okay, we should still be good. Just thinking that out loud. Okay, so what I have this feeling that's happening is, if you'll notice, some of these images come from a different site where others are coming locally. The local ones are all the stock photos. The ones that aren't are doing this. Now, if the images aren't found, what this is designed, what Babylon's designed to do is basically it'll show up blank on the screen. So I'm not certain yet if that's what's happening, but there's a way I can tell. If I come in here and I select the community ID, that's all I'm doing there, and if I go to my admin site instead, .php, I have some tools in admin. Community ID equals, and I set this as part of the URL. Now when I bring up this site, what it's actually going to do is it's going to bring it in through admin mode, which means you are now able to edit your own site. Ooh, skip frames, bam, it didn't like loading up all that extra stuff. Do I have anything else running on my machine? Are you able to see what I'm doing? Or did it stall? Is it stalled or can you continue? Oh, it's still continue. Okay. It was a quick thing when I first loaded this scene, so okay, I'll have to remember that. Okay, so still moving forward, there's development tools in here, and one of them is I can see what's loaded and what's not. So list of community molds, and notice nothing happened on the right. Connecting grids. Okay, I have 2 connecting grids loaded. Let's double check those. First of all, the first one, the ID on it, ITYU. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, we want to make sure things are loaded the way they're supposed to. ITYU, there it is. The community connecting grid loaded. That's a good sign. And the next thing I want to see is if we have action zones. And we have some action zones. Let's see. They're shown. Okay. That one triggered. That connecting grid is there. This action zone is loaded. This action zone's loaded. See, we have action zones loaded. So I'm really curious why, if the action zones are loaded, nothing else loaded. I have a feeling that, well, it didn't load it did not load the connecting grids, I mean the community molds. So if action zones are loaded and they're shown equals 2, status 0, action 2, status 2, which means I'm in that zone. The shown means that it's loaded if it's a 2. Status means it's loaded if it's a 2. Otherwise 0 means it has not loaded yet. So in this particular case, I'm not in the area that's going to load the stairs load zone, which is fine. Extreme load zone, status 2. Okay, so this one is showing right now. And okay, high loaded went far. That one is showing, and I'm in it. See, there's some things that should have triggered because of those pieces. So the next thing we want to double check is we're going to check the file that brings back the community molds, because notice if I click community molds, nothing is coming up here. So we are actually getting no community molds and no building molds. So that's where the next piece isn't happening. So let's go in our code. We're going to, okay, that's that piece. We're going to get rid of a couple of these code pages that I know we've gotten past now. The next piece is going to be our scripts, and we are running our prime scripts now. We're in our core page. There's two pieces that work together, core and common. Core is the loading sequence, so this tells it what to do and when and how. And then in the common, it tells adds in all the extra code of how to process things once they get loaded. So we're gonna jump in here, and there's this one thing in particular that we're gonna do. Notice we got past running all these, get connecting grids. It was good on all those. There's one in here I want to show you. It's before the movement. It's our actual, for anybody that's done Babylon, it is our screen, our scene loop, render engine. Okay, from here, one of the things it does is we're running our render loop. This is our render loop. Track movement, track movement. Now, track movement is multi-user. And there's a process in here. Set show molds. Okay, check action zones. This is the one I wanted to bring up. And the reason is, check action zones is actually the code that allows it to see if a avatar is within a zone, and then it triggers the process. See, because it's like my avatar intersects my action zone, then it means that I'm in the zone, and if I'm in the zone, if the type is load zone, then it says add load zone to queue. So it tells it, put it in the queue. Fine. We're going to get this process. I'm just following through it just so you can see. I would have jumped directly to the code otherwise. It puts it in a queue. Then there's a process that tells it, molding queue. Okay. Process queue. Load. Okay, wait a minute. Add load zone to queue, which puts it as a load extreme. So load extreme means get molds by web ID. So what it does is we've actually created a queue because we need to be able to control and not process too many things at once. So I threw them in a queue so that it can kind of distribute it, kind of do one thing at a time in different cycles of the render engine. We don't want it to do too much in any one cycle because then our animation gets paused and that's all a bad thing. So in here we are telling it what to do. We're telling it this command right here, which is where I was heading in the first place. Okay, found it. We're good to go. We are going to tell it on the side of the screen what to expect when we hit this particular piece. Now, the idea is I want to know what I want to know the different values that it's trying to send in here, and then I'm going to test it outside of the actual script to see that it's doing what it's supposed to. So let's load this page again. Okay. Okay, so it loaded the page and it gave us two different types that it's trying to load. One is the community at a far, and then the second one is the building at an extreme zone. Those should have loaded up. So let's test these. These are action zones by web ID, so let's see if these actually loaded. We're going to run, let's see, it's 3D dot, we're going to get the whole path in here, right? 3d.http3d.net is our test site, and then we append this piece on here, and it did grab back the action zones. That's a good sign. So that process is working. We should also have gotten the ones for for this. Okay, so those worked, which brought back extra load zones. Now the next one that I want to test out is, okay, we're dropping some frames, just watching the speed here. As I test things, okay, we'll get the other, okay, load molds. This, okay, so we did the get action zones, but what we need to do is we need to check the get molds. That's the one that is next. Okay, copy that. We have WalkTheWeb.log, and this one I suspect is having a little trouble. That's why we're going to test it. Okay, we're going to hit that. Refresh the page. Now notice these are where we should be getting some type of stuff back. Now the first one that it runs is right here, and we're going to find out what's going on with this one. And let's see, we are getting nothing back. That would explain why the molds isn't working. So is it a problem with, well, let's go through the process. Okay, so that one is calling, notice it's calling molds by web ID. So go to connect, molds by web ID, and we have a number of things that it's doing. First things first, that'll be the values that it brings in. Then it runs this big long sequence, which is very, very long. Yeah, you know it. Okay, what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to check the values that we're getting in here and make sure they are what we expect them to be. So let's see, we want, this is in PHP, so we're going to do this. I'm basically creating putting an inline script so that it tells me what's going on in different places, but because I'm doing that, I can't return JSON or it won't run the script. So I'm going to temporary while working on this piece. I'm going to coming down here, blah, 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 blah. And I know this is one of the longest longest SQL statements of all the stuff that I've run. This is the longest of them. I'm probably going to have to copy this to SQL, I can tell you already. I just want to double check the values that I'm bringing into the statement, but I can tell you already, I most likely need to copy the values into SQL, or copy the procedure and then make all the changes in it and run it to see what it's actually doing. But for now, I'm just making it where it's not running it as JSON so that we can bring back some script. Then we can do console log and we can tell it what values to bring back in here. First thing I want to know, did it read in the values that I expect, which and also, did it set values the way it's supposed to on the ones that I am not setting? So I'm going to do this, and okay, so we have that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different values that we're reading in. And I'm just gonna do these real quick. I know it's not a thing ID, but to be consistent, I want to know what it's passing into this whole thing so I can get them right. And we're going to clean those up. Okay. Okay, connecting grid ID. Okay, saving those files. I want to see what values are going in, then I'm going to grab this whole query and put it into SQL and see how that goes. So, first thing we need to do is just run this one page. I don't need to run the whole other page. And, whoops, helps if I show the column where the values are going. Okay, so force graphics level -1, which shouldn't be the case. That might be part of the problem we're having. Is it 0 or -1 that should be returning? We're going to find out. Okay, so we have blank for community ID. We have building ID because that's the one we're showing right here. Building ID is blank. Why? Community ID should be something. I'm bringing in web community ID. Wait a minute. That's a problem. Okay, so first thing I have is, why does the statement itself, core, why does it say web community ID and web building ID? Okay, there's my problem. When I created this one, modes by ID, I used it that way because we do have, community ID and building ID are different things than web community and web building ID. And so community ID is the current community that you're loading, but because this is grabbing different buildings along the way after you're already in a community, I couldn't use the same name as I'm passing it, because sometimes one of these values are going to be the one that I'm trying to pick up and not necessarily the one that I loaded as a whole, if that makes sense. The other thing that I just noticed is when I'm loading this, I'm loading the community, but notice this right here should be Z building because it is, no, it isn't. It should be community is there because it's the one we're reading, buildings there, and things there. See these values? That's what I should be pulling here, because notice these would be the ones that you're trying to load, not necessarily the ones that you're in. Oh, I did both. I gotta keep those straight. We have two different pieces. We have the community we're in, which is web building ID and building ID, or web community ID and web building ID. Then we have the ones we're loading. So what am I using web community ID for? Was there any actual use of web community ID in this original process, which would have been, let's look in the old site. That could have been my problem right from the start. Get molds by ID is right here. This version is the one from the test site, the one that I've been running, WalkTheWeb site. So when I bring these in, I'm not even reading web. I'm not even bringing it in, and no wonder I didn't translate it. Okay, wasn't even needed, isn't being used, says enough about that. But there's something else I noticed. So we don't want web. Okay, so but why is the community ID, when I go here, I go community, then building, then thing, and when I ran this page, I'm giving it, okay, community building. Oh, that is the building one right there. Okay, makes more sense now. But since I'm testing the community, I have the wrong statement that I want to do. Let's see, is this one? Yes, this is the community one. Let's grab this one first, just because I need to, let's do them in the order that they should load. We should get a community, and then we should get a building. They loaded in the backwards order on this page, which is interesting, because you start to get the building before you get the community that you're in. And maybe some I'll have to adjust later, but now we should get a community. Okay, building thing, action zone 2BD, that's the extreme zone. Action zone IND is not set. Coming into this scene. action zone IND, is it supposed to be a Z action zone IND, or is it really not set? If it's not null, it means it is loaded in the action zone. Why, if it passed it here, why is it not set? That would be a problem. Okay, let's see what we're passing here, because that could be the very problem. If I'm not getting an action zone IND, then we don't have an index of its use where it's not being instanced, and then we end up with different issues. So, WalkTheWeb log. We're going to double check this real quick. I just want to know, are we getting the index? Otherwise, something's not passing. That should be to this function. If we're not getting the value to the function, we're definitely not going to get the value out of the function. So, that said, we'll go here. We're going to refresh this page one more time. Okay, action zone IND is 0 and action zone IND is 4. So, when it runs this process and we're passing in action zone ID is there, parent parent action zone IND is 4. Okay. Let's break that down. We have parent action zone ID, then action zone ID. I need the parent, which is, it's set correctly there. I'm reading in, now here we go again. Let me double check. Over here we have parent action zone ID and we have action zone ID. Action zone ID is blank. We are not passing it. Huh. That's interesting. Action zone ID is being passed as a blank right there. I think I set that after the fact. But parent action zone ID is the one getting passed into the function, and that comes out as parent action zone ID. There's our mistake. Parent action zone ID. And do we have that coming back out? Yes, we do. So, action zone IND, though, we're setting it to blank in the other way, and this one, I'm giving it a -1. I think what happens is when it comes through as a -1, then I'm giving it other things based on that. So, let's hold off on that for a minute. Let's also, graphic level, okay, -1. It tries to read it in, which should give it a valid level. I'm going to change that -1 to 0 here, because -1 is not a factor. 0 means use its original graphic. The -1 means that it doesn't have one set. Now, let's check connecting grid IND. It starts with -1, but they're always set here, so okay, we should have something there now. Graphic level should be set, but okay. Now let's try that and see, do we get, no, we still don't. Okay, so we're getting this. We know the values we have here. Action zone ID, we have 4 there now. Graphics level is -1. Am I passing a -1 in that value? Let's double check that one. Coming from here, I'm going to check the value of the graphics level. What are we passing in? Graphics level is here, and we are passing in a -1. Okay, that does have its way about -1, so I'm going to put that back to -1 just to double check. I was just looking at the code. Okay. Now, since we know some values, that this is passing in, and we've kind of enforced those. If I need to do it again, I'll leave it there. And I'm going to get to the bottom of this, literally. Okay, and the last part is allows the cross browser in the header. Okay, so now doing this page, let's see if that made any difference. Okay, we're getting molds, but they're empty, which is one step more than we had a minute ago. Molds being empty, but we do know the values that it's sending. So, okay, here we go with the passing this. We have this select statement. I think there's multi-cases. Wait a minute. Is it multi-cases or is it a union? Get building molds that have been deleted. That has nothing to do with this statement. Okay, I'll have to tell it what it is once I realize what it is. Okay, so let's see. This is the select statement of all the different fields that we're pulling back. This one's from community molds, and then it has a union. So, welcome to the party. This is one long SQL statement with a lot of unions. Yeah, you see all this code? Can you imagine the day I wrote that? Just a bit going into that thought pattern. Guess I was on some that day. Too much caffeine or something. Okay, so putting this one in here. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is, we're going to do some searches and replaces because I'm not typing this every single time or looking through this whole thing every single time. Okay, so first thing we have is this is going to be replaced with just a WTW underscore because that's our table prefix for all these tables. We're going to replace all. Now we're going to replace this with the -1, which is the default that we decided is being passed in here, and we're going to replace all those. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so the next ones we have are the community ID, and we're going to replace that with the community ID that we're working with, which happens to be this ID. So this is just so we can test the statement. Once we figure out what's wrong, we'll have to figure it out. I have a feeling it has a couple fields that we no longer have in the code, so that would explain what's going on in a very, very quick piece here. What's happening is this code is designed to bring back things that are more than just it's nested items. So even though you're looking for the community, in this same action zone can be pieces of the buildings that we're told to use the default one above it or what have you. So has a really cool dynamic, and it has a really cool purpose behind it. This particular one, when we run this, I can tell by the query string. See, we have the web. Okay, so we're looking for the community, and the building is blank. If they were both set, then we're talking about bringing in something else, and that's going to be another test. But for now, this is the one we're trying to bring in, and it's going to be replaced with a blank. So we're not sending a building ID, and I'm sure we're going to find a couple of these that say thing ID someplace here. It's in the from clauses at this point, so here it is. Copy that, and this one also we're not passing in a thing ID, so replace all those with just blank for now. Okay, and there's one way to tell. Let's execute this command and see. Okay, 3D WalkTheWeb uploads. Why do I have 3D up? That would explain it. There's a table name here that doesn't even exist. we're going to look for, it had the hard-coded name in here and I didn't get the piece out of place. Okay, so we're going to find 3D walk the web dot uploads, and we're not going to do a replace on that one. We're just going to do a find, and we're going to find next. Well, let's start here and find next. Where is it? Come on. Come on. Okay, let's look for uploads. Somewhere there's a place that doesn't have the WTW prefix. So we're gonna double check these real quick. And that's fine because that's a table. Okay, that one right there should not be that. That's a problem. Okay, so this particular one, notice we've already taken WalkTheWeb uploads and we have uploads. That's actually correct because we have uploads here and then we have U1 there. So that is the alias of that table. Moving on to the next one. Same thing there. And I'm going to hit a whole bunch of these. Wait a minute. Where uploads, that one is correct or wrong? That is still within the, okay, that's still in the, within the quotes. Okay. Well, let's see. I'm probably going to have to alias those in every one of those statements to find out where this is actually happening. There's a bunch of these statements. So, let's go ahead and let's fix them. It is going to take a little time, but it's worth fixing. Okay, so what happened was, in this particular case, this uploads right here, because it's getting confusing because it's the name of a table and the name of an alias. So to double check that and make sure we're actually to make sure that we're actually getting this done right, I'm going to change that. We have a U1 already in this statement, so we're going to call it U2, which means it'd be our uploads there, and that means here and here within that statement would be using the U2. And we're going to be hitting a lot of these. But the good news is it's very consistent about where they show up and the way I formatted the page. So shouldn't take me too long to find them and fix them. And as we're going, we'll just keep an eye on if there's another thing that is in error here. So we'll knock these out real quick. Like I said, it has to be the longest statement that I ever wrote. No. And notice how this one is a statement that goes to there. This one's a statement that goes to there. So even though they're two separate select statements, so they can be the same name through there, there's no conflict. And here we have uploads, 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 uploads. Good news is I can double click on it and it selects it. So correcting code, correcting code. Once we get this one working, I have a feeling we're going to start seeing some stuff on our screen. So we'll take it from there and go to the next step. But this one would definitely stop it. If we're not bringing back any objects to put on the screen, then we definitely don't have something on the screen. So, yeah. Okay. Have that, there. A lot of these statements before were written into stored procedures and now they're raw in the code. So basically this particular one, being as a stored procedure, always referenced its own table locally and didn't have an issue. Now that it's doing this and it's going to there, it's getting confused between looking at the actual, looking for an actual table name and the fact that I aliased it, calling it its own table name. So because of that little conflict in naming schemes, it couldn't tell the difference of when it's supposed to look for an alias table and when it's supposed to look for an actual table. Yeah. When I tested this on my other site, I didn't use a prefix. So basically, that was never an issue in the version without a prefix because the names were the same thing. So I didn't have to alias it back to itself, or I didn't have to alias the table. But now that you can come in here with any prefix, now the tables can have different names than just the word uploads. So that's where the problem exists in this particular command that didn't in my test site. In my test site, the raw table is called uploads, so no alias there. And like I said, we're going through each one of these because they just need to be done. So going through it, that's okay. Uploads, uploads, uploads. This is very repetitive because each one of these are pulling out a different value out of the uploads table. What they're doing is they're comparing. There are many different images that can be set for any one mold. So community mold, for example, what it's doing is for each one of those images, if you have a texture on the surface, if you have a like a button that you can move your cursor over and highlight, if you have a height map or a mix map or something of that nature, every one of those values are an ID for the uploads table and cross-references there. So what these commands are doing is grabbing that alias and pulling back the proper path to that upload file. Now, in addition to doing that, they also have have the ability to set the graphics level that you want to see at any particular time on the site. So if I'm looking at the site and all of a sudden I say, hey, this one object always needs to be 4K graphic, or my highest quality graphic that I uploaded, for example, something that you can walk really up close and you need to see the details, then that particular item, that particular graphic, has to be the top-end graphic quality. Well, I allow you to set it per graphic, so that added this complexity to the statement because any single graphic could have a higher quality being forced. So in the statement, that means it's having to go through and check those particular values, and for each one of them, it has to do a case else statement so that it knows, check the graphic level of what you're inputting in, and if it's been set in the database to force it to a higher graphic level, but it checks the graphic level that you're viewing the site from. So if you force the graphics levels to high, it'll automatically use all uploaded graphics. If you force it to auto detect, then it'll use by default whatever it's set in the database, which means some of them will be higher level and some of them will be lower level. If you have a slow computer and you want this to run, the graphics to run smooth, you may force it to a lower level, and that is all accounted for in this SQL statement. So a lot of pieces, a lot of parts, a lot of reasons, and also there's a lot of images that are being drawn from. So put that all together and we have one really long SQL statement with a lot of case statements built into it. Okay, so going through these, and we'll be there sooner or later. We're about halfway through with this file, as you can tell, so, okay, I didn't miss anything right there. Those are all good. And uploads again, here we go, uploads. Kind of notice the pattern of what I'm looking for, and then each time I find it, there's 3 values that need to be updated. There's some that don't have this particular pattern. Those were different types of values that didn't have the options of doing the graphics to higher level. So uploads, Here it is. Or actually, it's the other way around. Those graphics are always using the higher level. For example, if you are using a height map, I like to use your original graphics for the height maps because they give you the most detail and the least likely to give a awkward looking map. You know, ragged edges. More details you put in your height maps, the more contours it can take on, and the better quality that you're going to get. So we're just pounding through the code here. Let's see. We'll get to some cool stuff soon. Doop doop doop. Okay. I know this one's tedious because after I do this, then I have to go through and fix all the ones on the other site to make sure that they all do the same thing. So, well, see what we can do on that one. See if there's a way to automate some of these things because they are very repetitive where they're coming from. So if I can do a search and replace that doesn't mess everything up, I'll do it. Otherwise I got to do this a second time on that page. So yeah, we'll see. See, because some of them don't change. Okay, we're still chugging along. This should be the last time through, hopefully. Wait, uploads. Yeah, I know. This is tedious, but necessary. And this should fix our statement, which then would bring us back the results of our different molds that we're trying to put on the screen. And then we get to see if the graphics work or if we have to... See, I haven't downloaded the graphics to your site. I downloaded the all the different data sets that are associated with them. So the paths that it's pulling are still running from my site at the moment. I am going to make it so that they download to your site and they load from there, but I haven't written that code yet. So just going through these. Uploads. Yeah. These are very tedious, but notice on the scroll bar on the right, we are getting closer to the end of the file, which would really help get us there. But let's see, we're going to go through these, we're going to go through that. Okay, and we're doing those. And there's one more set. Okay, so uploads. That means we've done 4 out of 5 sets. 4 out of 5. Dennis surveyed. Have no clue what they're talking about. Just kidding. Okay. And getting there. We're almost there. We're chugging down through here. Okay. And uploads. What's that? Oh, Malkin. Oh. Sounds like Renee's house too. My sister. Internet troubles. Okay. Just going through these. It's very tedious, but we're almost to the end of the file. And we are. So now does that work? and it found another field that doesn't exist. It's still somewhere in here. Now I'm going to search for, okay, we need to search for uploads again. Something is still giving the problem. Oh, wait a minute. Let me make sure I didn't highlight anything. Okay, so uploads. Okay. We're looking for the word uploads because somewhere there's one that's not set to WTW uploads, and that's something that needs to be addressed. And so somewhere in here, one of these statements are missing the path of where it's supposed to be going to. So, getting there. So far these are all good. You know, it could be just one missed on one statement and it would cause that error. So we're going to find out which one is missing the WTW in front of it. Okay, we're on the, can't go too fast because I don't want to bypass it and not see it. Dun 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 dun. Okay, we're still going through them. Where's the one I missed? Wait, found it. Where was it? Right there. Uploads. Okay, so WTW underscore. And I already know that's going to be in the second one, and it's oops. Okay, so start from the top, and I can already tell it's missing this statement, and that particular one is on the second time through, texture BID. So let me find texture B. That's not the one. Those both have them. And those both have them. Okay, it wasn't one of the bump map ones. I know, this is on uploads. Okay, we're going to fix all those after. I know there's another statement. We're just trying to get to. Okay, so texture BID. This is where it should have found it, and it's right there. And another one on the next line down. Two of them in a row right there. That could be causing all the problems I'm having. Interjoin uploads. My gosh, there's a few of them. So, when I missed them, huh? Okay, so I just found 3 of them. So that's one there. Oops, don't want to do that here. WTW underscore. And on the next row down right here, there was one more left join right there. WTW underscore. And let's find out if that gets us through it, or was there more missed? No, okay. Excuse me. Okay, so there's this particular one is saying that there's an upload objects.upload object ID in where clause that it has no idea where it came from. So starting at the beginning, find, and we're going to look for upload objects dot upload object ID. Okay, we're going to look for that in the code starting at the top. And where is it happening? It is happening here. Oh, well, of course you can't do that. Basically, this one, I just need that not to be there. So let's see. And now we have 19 rows returned. We have our code. Yay. Okay, now that we know what is causing the problem, it was those 3 that were missed for that, and we have in here, we have one of these that are causing the errors. Find next. And what it is this one doesn't need that because it's the table prefix and it shouldn't have been there. Okay, so let's see if this now brings back data. Yay, we have data. So next test. Do we have a website? And this is probably going to cause some skip frames while it's loading, but we'll see if we can't survive it. Okay, good news and bad news. First of all, good news, we did bring in the objects. Yay. Bad news, it does not like where the images are loaded, which is on the other server. So now I have to bring back the data and get the images back to this site. But with that said, the good news is we are in the right site and it is here. So now I just have to get the images loaded, which is a process that I expected to have to do. Now what I'll do, okay, it's not letting me click anything. Yikes. Get it back to, yeah. Okay, that would be skip frames. You guys lost me, huh? You can still see, okay. Okay, so now what that did was basically I am able to bring back the objects, but as you can see, I am inside of the checkerboard pattern. Checkerboard pattern is a sign that none of the images loaded, which is also what you're seeing on the right side of my screen, which shows trying to load image, and it basically couldn't get to any of the images. What that is each one of these images in the database. Oh, here we go again with it froze the screen. Okay. And ba-doop, 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 ba-doop. Yep, it killed me. La da 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 da. Abracadabra. So can you still hear me over there or see me or anything? Okay. Ah, see, it's frozen. Okay. Come on back. Come on back. Okay. So. Hello. I'm back. Okay, so basically we get past that statement which allowed it to bring the objects back, which takes it to where I thought we were in the first place. So now did a couple corrections, fixed a couple pieces of code where there was a couple errors in where things were at, and now it likes that better. While I'm here, since I did it on the test code and it needed it fixed, one of the things I'm going to do is fix a couple lines of code here. Come on, computer. Come on. And let's see. Come on. Come on back. Da 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 da. Abracadabra. Thank you. Okay, let's kill this screen since nobody can see it right now anyway. Okay, now we're back. Sorry about that. Okay, so basically we finally got past a piece of the code that allows it to load the different, all the different areas. I need to go through this and fix a couple references in this piece, and then we are able to bring back the objects now. So the next one is that after we got the objects, now none of the images are coming through because the images are actually not imported to this site yet. So if we look in the database currently and we go to anything like our uploads, if you'll notice, the stock images are one thing, which are the ones that don't have a past upload ID. But any of these others currently, right here, for example, have this path that is a valid path, but to the other server. So instead of pulling those images and downloading them, it doesn't have them locally stored. And because of that, Babylon is going, nope, we're not going to load those images, and basically you get the checkerboard pattern through the whole thing. So as part of our install, part of our imports of bringing in all this stuff, what I need to do is for each one of those images that it did that with, I need to basically write the image to the hard drive, and the good news was I have it in file data for the most part. So whenever I have it in file data, all I have to do is write it to the drive. If I don't have it in file data, I have to fetch it off of the server and download it and then put it in your drive. So when I do these steps, I need to update the file path to be the new path. Getting that? So the next step is going to be, first of all, writing the ones that actually have the file data. So we're going to grab those to the drive, we're going to write them out, and then we're going to basically upload the path so that they are, so they're basically on our local drive. So first things first, let's figure out even how many we're dealing with and kind of get a picture of what it is. I already kind of have a rough idea because we have 144 of them, which are the stock images that are already uploaded to the drive. So let's eliminate those. Past upload ID blank. That's those. We're going to say we're not. Past upload ID equals blank. And that should get rid of those to begin with. And then we're going to be processing these based on two different steps. The first one is, if we already downloaded it through the database, then we already have the image data. All we have to do is translate that and write it to the drive and update the path. So we have these in two different pieces. One of them is, so one of them is going to be where the blob data is null, or if the blob data exists. Now, some of these that have that, notice there's no path already there, no problem, because we're going to be updating those anyway. But the ones that have null for the blob data, those are the ones we're going to use this file path to go get them and download them. So, going through this, first thing, we're going to have this in two pieces. I'm going to write the two statements just so we get the idea of which ones are which. So first one is going to be where file data is null. Oops, I didn't mean to say where again. And I didn't mean to put it inside of there. So let's do this the right way. And file data is null. And then the other one is going to be where and not file data is null. Okay, so this one's going to give me one subset of it, and it's going to be 8 rows. So we have 8 rows, and notice the pattern here. They're sound files. They would be video files, sound files. In fact, they are video and sound files. And then this should be all images, because for this set and this release, we've been writing all the images to the actual drive. So since we have all of the file blob data beforehand on all these, we need to first get those knocked out of the place and get those written to the hard drive and update the file paths. And then we're going to hit the ones that need to reach out, grab a file from the internet, download it, load it locally, and then, so it's transferred. Okay, so with that said, here we go. First thing we're going to do is let's handle the ones that file data is not null. So this will knock out 53 of them right off the start. So here we go. The process there where we're going to run this is actually part of it's not connect. It is, well, first of all, it's not that site. I want to make sure I'm working in the right site. Okay, so it's not a connect process. It is a function of uploads, and we have where it's uploading, import uploads. So in this process, it goes through and imports all of the various uploads. Then we have a number of things that clean up the ID so that it knows which ID to work with on the latest stuff. When it finishes this process, then what we need to do is we need to grab the images that were part of this piece that we were doing and tell it to upload them. So since we're already grabbing web images, we're already getting this piece. You know, I know this is a tricky place, because when we're doing this, notice I've already found out, I already know all the information. I already know if the file data is local or stored, or if we're going to put a null in its value. I already have it prepared, and then I insert into the database. Well, we have else statement, and then we put it basically with a null value. So right here, I could insert something that basically knows that this data is a file path, and I can tell it to write it to the drive just at this very instant. I've already done a section of this stuff, so what I want to do is I want to look at when I have the file data and I want to write it to the drive. There's a couple things that I do. First of all, I'm deciding what path I want it to go to. Yeah. We're going to do a little bit of separation of paths, only because I want to be able to tell what type, where it came from in the uploads folder. So if it's something systematically opposed to something that is user-based uploads, I want you to know where it came from just by doing it. I don't know. Is that more trouble than it's worth? Well, let's see. Let's get it on the drive first, and then we'll decide if we like where the paths are. So I get this stuff. I have this file data. Upload file to there. I have this file data, and then save file data image. See, I'm bringing in file data, and I tell it, okay, I tell it how to prepare it. Then I tell it data run, put contents, file put contents, tells it my path. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, so I have file data, and that file data, I believe, gets written to the drive with this data in place. That's not hard to confirm, because if you look at, actually, it's a little harder than I said. Okay, so file data is being written to the drive, upload to DB. This particular stuff is uploading it to the drive with upload file DB. The file data that it's getting is no. Well, that's awfully fun. I didn't write it there. Let's see, where am I writing it? I'm writing it here. File data is coming in. The file data has slashes, but it also has, I'm removing that data, so it is the raw data without the image heading into the data. So when I write the decode the file data is data 1. Okay, so to get a couple pieces here, yeah. Okay, just making sure. So the file data I have is the raw file data. It needs to have that piece added back onto it to show it, which we can do. We're writing it to the drive as the raw, let's see, file data with a plus at the beginning of it, becomes the decoded data, which gets written to the drive. That is how I'm doing that. File 1 is, where's file 1? File 1 is the file path, is where I'm putting it, plus the file name. Okay. Okay, with all those little pieces said. File name could be a duplicate, so we need it to be instanced. We could, a couple decisions to be made here. We want the name to kind of make sense, but at the same time it needs to be unique, so we kind of need to do a couple little parts to this. The names, when you upload your files, the file names can be duplicates. That's just part of the nature of the beast. Okay, so in this case, I create a content path, which we already know from our code. We create previews, we create things, buildings, and communities. So those would be a breakdown of what you are using and some typological. I think I want them to be under uploads just so that it treats it a little nicer than that. Then I do the path, and then I do here. Okay. Yeah, I know. I'm taking a long time doing this. I'm thinking about where they're going, because these are snapshots. We're not doing snapshots. We're doing buildings. And the buildings should have the various parts. We're going to need to column uploads. We're going to need, I'll see, this whole thing is content. I'm thinking ahead about the structure of the site, and notice here's the issue. Before I did it less than preferable. So we have content directory, whoops, not connect, content directory. Then we have components and system. Components are your plugins. Then we have system. I'm going to create a third path here called uploads, and that's where everything's going to be that you upload. Now, dependent on who put it there, I could upload them by user ID. I could upload them by date of when they were uploaded, and then track in the database what user ID does it, because we do track that anyway. I could separate them by community, building, and thing, because those are unique IDs anyway, after the uploads, because I could say the different directories for communities, buildings, and things. Then I could have, yeah, but then just because you go to a particular community, if somebody uploads something in that community, we could put it in that particular site. If you physically had to go to your own server and find an item, it would be a lot easier if you knew, if you could do the community ID or building ID and separate them by that. Because if you were looking by user ID, it could be any user that put it there. Okay, I guess I just solved my own problem with that. Let's put them all in buildings, uploads directory, so that it's components, uploads, and system. And then underneath uploads, we will use buildings, communities, and things. That makes the best sense for what we're doing. So I'm going to copy from here to to there, just because that's the put file code that I want to use. I know that was the right file code, and that could be reused. Why am I? This particular one, save image file PNG. They're not all PNG. Okay, let me see which ones I have. Copy file, not the case right now. That does not do it. Update file in database. That is not what we're doing. Save image file PNG, but it does database upload updates also. I'm just trying to see if we've actually got the code already here to do this. Upload file to database, not the case. I'm trying to see if we got a function that does close to this. Avoid duplicates, get new file name. Oh, get new file name could be helpful to us because we tell it the file name. It numbers them if there's duplicates. That could be friendly for us. That would help us with uploading duplicate files with the same file name, yet be friendly for which file is being used where. That could be very helpful. So get new file name, we'll keep that in mind. Data to file. Output 64 base string, output file. Okay. That may do exactly what I'm looking to do. And not necessarily. Upload object, nope. Set visibility, and then web uploaded images. Okay, so what I'm seeing is that I need a simple process, and I'm going to call it, I need something very straightforward. Public function, we'll call this write file from data. We'll rename that as we go. So, and we're going to drop some of this code in place. Once we get a couple of the little formatting things here in place, we're going to drop that there so we know how to kind of get the right place it's going to go. Okay, and the other thing I want to see that I'm either going to pass or not pass from here is, do I already know from my code here, mold group is going to be, if it's a community, yes, that'll tell me the group. So I want to pass that, and then I want to pass the ID to this function. Yeah, I know. So to make sure we got all the pieces in place, write data to file. What I'm going to expect is base 64 data, just so I know that's what I'm bringing in here. Z base 64 data, and Z mold group, which is the going to tell me if it's a community building or thing, which is our scene, our buildings, or our things that we're putting in them. Okay, and then the final part here is we're going to pass the file name that we want to call it. Well, one more piece we're going to put is the we're going to pass the web ID, which is going to be the community ID, the thing ID, or the building ID. And then the file name that we want to use, the suggested name that it came out with. Okay, we'll watch out for duplicates and we'll make sure that ends up being where it's supposed to be. But, okay, so that takes care. That's kind of a little bit of our structure what we're going to bring in. Okay, the first thing this code's going to do is we're going to check, you know what, I want to separate this into two pieces because I don't see a need to run this on every single file that we're creating, but I do need to run it a little. So we're going to make two different functions. One of them is going to be called, this one's going to be check upload directories, or I should say folders. Come on, let's be modern. Check upload folders. What check upload folders is going to do is we're not going to pass in any of that data. All it's going to do is it's going to make sure that our structure for our upload folders is in place. So anywhere we're doing all of this stuff, we're going to put all of them in one place. So now I can remove all that from that code so it doesn't get repeated on every single upload that happens. And we're going to do it once per process that runs. So now from here, we're good to there. Okay. And this is going to be our check uploads. So we're going to make sure that the file structure is what we want it to be. First thing I'm going to do, okay, I just copied that twice. First one I'm going to do is we're going to make sure in our content path we have uploads. Then, after we have uploads, we're going to make sure it has things. And we do not have a thing ID yet, so that one, okay, so there are going to be a couple of ones we're going to check. You know what? Let's do mold group, because you're either working with a community building or thing. This will save us a little bit to keep it all in one function still. And then the web ID. Then based on those, now oops, what did I do that for like that? Let me back out of there. Okay. And okay, so what I need on here, let's do this the right way, is I need uploads, and I need not necessarily things, I need it to be whatever group I'm passing in here. In this case, it's going to be things, but I can use the same thing if it happens to be communities, if it happens to be avatars, if it happens to be anything. I can use it for whatever it needs to be. Then, after I have that level, then the next level I need is, the next level I have after that would be web ID. So I know which particular one I'm actually working with. So here we're going to do, oops, that and web ID. So now we're creating the path for the web ID of whatever we're working with. So the good news is by doing this process, even if you don't have any particular uploads that are landing in this directory, what'll happen is it'll create the directory for you, which helps set up the path for future uploads. You'll already have it in place, it'll already be there. And if you look on your server, for every community, building, and thing that you have, it has a folder where those particular items will be stored. So kind of keeps everything nice and neat of where they come from. Okay, so we have that level, and notice the next one I did here was also, I do have a snapshot folder. I'm going to drop those in the root of this site with the other items. No, because somebody could conflict with the name. Okay, we're going to go one more folder higher, and this one's going to be snapshots. And snapshots, basically the system creates a snapshot based on whatever you're working on. So as you're working on this, you can set your own snapshots. You can figure out the perfect image of where you want the scene to view. And then when you click the button, it automatically writes this snapshot to this particular folder. This becomes the default image if you are trying to share your building or your thing or your community or whatever you're creating, this becomes that default image that gets uploaded to the other server and gets shared. It also is the default image when somebody wants to see, let's say you create a community and somebody gets the preview of what that link is going to show. This is that image you get to see of what community you're going to, so what scene you're going to see. So they become very useful for making it the way you want it to look when you get there. Okay, so now that I have those in place, I don't need this building or communities section because they're going to be created by this default one of whatever I do here, this pattern. Now, I will use the same pattern for, I'll use the same pattern when it comes to avatars. So like if you were to share out an avatar in the future or a vehicle or something like that, you're going to be able to download those and add them to your scenes. That's the kind of stuff that we're going to be able to put in this same format. So in each uploads, it's going to be grouped by what type of thing you're looking for, searching or downloading. And then it's going to be the ID of the actual item that you have based on your machine. So it's going to be your ID that you use for it, not necessarily the ID it came from. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to run this check uploads process to make sure we have the folders we need. We're going to run that not on every single, for each loop. We're going to run it once before we actually do it, but we only need to do it if we actually return files. So I'm going to do that after it processes and all this stuff. I'm going to run that quick little statement right here. Looks like a good spot for it. And that'll be this object, check upload folders, and we're passing in mold group and we're passing in the web ID. Okay, so that'll make sure we have the folders in place. Then when it does this process, all we need to do is tell it what we're trying to write and how. So, and we want to return, something, I don't want to do it after I write it. I want to do it beforehand because I'm going to update this file path based on what I do. So I actually want it to be here when we have the file data first, and then we're going to update the file path. So let's get this in the right place, because we can give it a new file path and then return that file path, write it to the folder here, right with the item, with the new file in place. So let's make this, we already know. Okay, I'm gonna get this process out of the way just because we don't need it right here. Oh, we do have a, so we have a, we have an iframes, which we need to do a global on that, and we also have a z equals false, and then when it completes all these steps, we'll do z equals true. Okay, so that kind of gives our framework for that. Now, just because I'm working on the process right above it, I just want to move that down after this next process. So basically we'll put it here so that it's out of our way. We'll rearrange the order of things later on. Okay, so now based on that, when we run this process, one of the things we're going to do is we are going to be updating two pieces. We're going to be updating the file. We're going to be passing a new file name. Oops, let's go z. File name equals, I'm going to say blank for a moment, and then I'm going to say z new file path, which will be the complete path to the file that we determine as we do this process. Then when it completes this, we're going to return both of those objects. We're going to return an array of two values, the first one being file name, and it'll be this new file name, and then we're going to return file path. Oh, helps if I use the right notation in the right place, which is going to be the file path. Okay, and let's fix that. Okay, so now what we've actually done is we have put this in here. We're going to be returning these paths as we figure out which path we're going to use. I'm going to be looking to make sure that we don't have a duplicate file in its place. We're going to look at the duplicate names. We're going to make sure it's clear before it actually tries to do it. So there's another piece of this. We have the file path, which is where we're writing it, and then we have the browse path, which is where we are putting the files. So we're not going to need all this stuff. We are going to need iframes, content path. So we are going to need global this. And now to do this all at once, what we have, first of all, these aren't snapshots. These are going to be the path to the ID, and they're going to be images placed directly underneath the ID of what we have. That's where this particular process is going to go. So with that, I don't need preview path, preview file name. I don't need those pieces. What I do need is I need to know, first of all, the file path. I don't have that used anywhere else. So file path and then a browse path. This is what I'm going to be creating. So first of all, we have mold group, which is going to be first uploads, then our mold group. So that's going to be uploads, then our mold group. And then it's not going to be buildings. It's going to, because mold group is setting that level. So then the next piece is going to be not the building ID, but this web ID, which will be specific to a building, this, you know, whichever one it is. And then the final part is going to be in that folder. So this gets us that far. Now we have the content path that we're going to test and check, and we have the paths that we're going to use. And why? Oh, that helps. There we go. Okay. This one stripped out that data. That data is already gone because I'm actually downloading data from one database to another. So the data is already cleaned and ready to place in the table the way it's supposed to be. So I do not need to add that line to it. The data is clean. File data is this base64 data. Just so we know, we are dealing with the same file. I want to make sure, because no, it isn't. Is it or isn't it? Yes, it is. It is base64 data written to the table. That's how it's written to the database. Okay, so we don't need this line. Now we have the path plus file name and data. Okay, so the file name, notice we don't have file name, and we have file path, which is now path. That's where we're going to try to put it. That part's concrete, that's where it's going, and this is where we're doing this. So, and then we're going to return these items. You know what? I'm going to say new file path is, do we need file name, file path, or do we need just the one? Double check. We have file path and we have file name separately. We also know the extension, which we already know going in. So the only ones I really have to concern myself are with file path and file name. Okay, so I do want separate file path, file name coming back, which I think I already figured out file name, file path. File path includes the file name, just so you know. So this is actually the new file path that we're going to use. Okay, and that'll be returned here. So that is where the file is with its complete name in context. And then this one is going to be the file name, which we're going to use. But before we do, we're going to test it out and make sure that that file name is unique in this particular folder. There's a function already written for that, and we're going to get it and check it and test it. So we'll double check that piece, but what's going to happen is we're going to do this, and then we're going to write the file data based on this. I don't think we need this replace statement because we're already passing in what was in the database, and we are base 64 data, base decode. Okay, no, we do have to set that one piece. Or do we? We're going to try it without that line because I don't think we need that. But if we do, we can put it back in. Okay, we're basically taking files, transferred them over. We brought them in as a database object, so now we are going to write them to the drive. This is the images that we're using for our particular item that we're using right now. And okay, so this piece, we're bringing them in. We're double checking. We get our data, we get our group. Okay, so now we want to make sure we're passing what we think we have. And okay, what we're going to do is we're going to say, I can't use results. File results equals this and that. And from this, it's going to be the file row data because we know we're passing that particular data here. The zmold, which we already know we have that, and the file name is going to be what it recommends here. So we'll get that, and we're going to pass that value in. Now, from these file results, we are going to get the file name equals file results. Blah, 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 blah. And that is file name. I think that's all that is. We'll know if I got that right shortly. And this one's going to be file path. Actually, I think I'm using the wrong notation. I think I need this notation. I'll know when it works or doesn't work. It's an array that I'm bringing back, so this notation should be able to get those two pieces. And once I have those file name and path that's been checked and scrubbed and made sure it works, then I want to write that file name, the new file name here, and the new file path to be here. Okay, and that should be the right piece for that. So let's see what actually happens. So we have file name, file path coming back out of this function, and we're not done with this yet. So let's continue on. Check up the folders. Why did I? Okay, I copied and pasted that, put it down here, and left the other one back here. Okay, we don't need that twice. It was supposed to be a cut, paste. There we go. Okay, so write data to file. We have our path. Is it our browse path? Yes, it is our browse path we're returning, not the other one. So we want, actually, instead of new file path is our, that should be our file path. And let's do file path here. the Z in front of it. And then I want the new file path to be equal to our browse path is the one we want on this. This is what we're returning. So our browse path dot and then our new file name. Now our new file name is dependent on running a check to make sure the file name doesn't already exist in that path. And we have a function up here. Let's go see what that was real quick. It's a little utility. Get new file name. What we do is we pass a file name in. It looks to see, oh, and it's also writing the name of that. That's not what I want. That's putting dimensions into the file name. Okay, that wasn't doing the one I want to see. Avoid duplicates. That's the one I want. This one checks the upload path and the file name that you're currently using, and then it looks to see what your extension was and what your file name was, and then it increments your file name with this value to see if it exists. If it already exists, it'll keep on incrementing it +1 until it finds one that's not being used, and then it returns the file name. So if I use this as a quick check in my function down here, then I'm making sure I get a new name, Z new file name, and that equals this function. And so now I'm making sure that this function is going to use the correct stuff. Let's get that in place. This is our file name we're passing in. Oops. That's what it should be right there. And then what happens is, gosh, I really just screwed up all my variables here. Okay, we'll do Z data because we've done Z on everything else. And our browse path should be a Z browse path, not just browse path. And so now we have all the pieces in place. Okay, so what happens is we send it in here, we have our data, we have our group is going to be what type of item we're building, we have the ID of that particular item, and then we have the file name we're passing in. We're checking that file path, which is the complete path with the file and the file name. We're looking to see, does that name already exist in that path? If it does, it automatically increments it. Otherwise, it'll return that same name if it's not being used yet. So that way we don't end up with duplicate names in the same directory that we're doing. So from there, then we know the file path that we're actually going to put this stuff is with the file name. So we take the file path, file name. Actually, that is that one. That should be the new file path. Is this one. Okay, this is... Now that we've already checked the file path there, we don't need that name. We need it with the name, so we're going to put it here. That's bad form. I don't like changing what it means halfway through. We're going to do it this way just so that we know we're passing the file path that we've cleared here, and we add the new name to it that we've tested and we've given it. And based on that, we're taking the data and we're putting the contents on the drive. That should give us file name and file path back to the object, which then in turns writes it to the drive, and we should have the new updated path and file name. So they should be local paths to its own drive. That's what that's our goal for this one step we're going to test out here. Notice what we have that we're targeting are the ones that the file data has data. So that's going to be all of these ones like this, and here we have, for example, footpath and different items that do not have the drive or the data here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's break some eggs. No, okay, all you Marvel fans out there, you know what that one means. It's time to dump what's in these tables because we are not... This is the install process that we're doing. We're testing out. So basically there are no files in that directory. See, there's nothing there. The table doesn't even exist. And so now we will test out the whole process. That was checking that. I'm going to HTTP. Oh, what have I got? 3d.http3d.net. And if you're just joining us, what we're doing is we're building 3D Internet. It's an open source project. Sometime this month I will be releasing my code to open source, and we'll get it out there to you so that you can do it. I created it on 3d.walktheweb.com first, and then from there I placed it into, sorry about that. So from there what I did was I placed it into, I took a copy of the code that I was doing on my test site. I had tried all kinds of stuff. I had tried extra modules. I tried different create different code to do different things, and I tested out so much stuff. I took a copy of that code, moved it over, and then I stripped it down and took everything to its back-end plugins and decided exactly what it was going to be. So basically from there, I was able to create the source. I was able to use this to create a core product and then make the other things plugins of the different things I was testing. So what we're doing is just testing out one of those steps, and let's see if we can't get this one to load. Okay, so we're working on the install process. It asks you for a couple things here. I'm going to open up this column so that we can see what we've done, and we're going to save that. We're going to create our first community. And it goes through, it's grabbing our images. This is where it should be writing files to the drive in the folder that we're expecting it to. So, in fact, while it's doing that, if I come in here and double check, first of all, our drive did not, oh wait, helps if we go in the right place. Uploads, content. Nope, it did not create the actual folder. So we already have a flaw. We already know it didn't work, and we're going to continue testing on that and find out what's going on with it. So we should have been able to use this code, check upload folders. Chances are it threw an error and, oh, wait a minute. Did it just not get to that code yet? Okay, finish that code. Let me see. Did it finish it, and did it actually do it when it was at that point? Yes, we have an uploads folder, we have community, we have the community we're creating, and we have images. Yay. Now let's see if any of these, yes, they are real images, which means we've encoded them correctly. We now have liftoff. We have images, so that process did work. So that took care of that piece of it, and the final piece is the values that we have in the table. Did it indeed update the paths? And I'm seeing the paths updated. We have some of them with a number afterwards because they were duplicates in naming. Okay, we have it. We have the different items. It worked. So that was the part we were working on right now, and we are able to write the files to the local drive. We were able to give them their particular uploads directory. We created the different content folders. Right now we created community because that's the one we were on. As it goes through the different ones, it will create the different other pieces. So if we click the next step, we should see a buildings one get created here. And we'll see it when it gets to that stage, but let's keep on running it. So it's fetching the upload files, and as soon as it comes back and tells us that it is writing the upload files, we should see it happening. So it's about finished with fetching, and we're writing the files. And let's see, did we get an error or did it work? It's writing the files. Oh, it's gathering the data, it's sending it to the form. It actually happens at the end of that process, because it actually happens very quickly, but the process of importing all the data that just came from there went into a temp file local on your server. Then from the server, it writes it to the form and submits the form. Then it processes it. So even though you learned in the last lesson is we move the item forward. Oops. Okay. So we have building now. And we have the ID, and we have the different images, and they're all here. So, yay. We should now, as soon as I select something, Let's see if we can break it. Let's see, we got that. And I'm going to close the avatar settings. And let's see what loads and what doesn't. Some of the images are not loaded yet. We're going to track that down and find out why. We had some other errors that happened before this. So we're going to check into some of that. I'm going to need to find out exactly which ones worked and which ones didn't. And then from there, we're going to have to go through and check which images came through, which ones didn't, and see if the ones that we were expecting are actually loaded now. We're going to have to run some tests on different things here, but the process of importing the images and getting the file path correct has worked, so we are good on that, and now we can go from there. So I want to thank everybody that joined me today. We've done quite a bit of stuff here. We were able to create the different items. We were able to download our files that we were expecting. So, yay. That was a good session, and I will be seeing you again real soon. So thank you for joining me. Okay.